So there we are, 2 minutes to the start of the next session. And I'm very proud to say that we have an excellent panel here today. And you will all introduce yourselves, and Jenna will lead that panel. That's of course clear. But again, we have very different countries represented, very different projects and topics. And I'm sure that will be a very enthusing and interesting discussion. And with that, I withdraw the floor to you. But Janet, just that you know, there is the opportunity that if you like, attendees can raise their hand later, and then I can give them the right to use the microphone to ask a question if that's all fine with you. I think it's nicer than just the Q&A. Okay, enjoy your session and the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Uwe, for the introductions. Can I just check you can hear me well? Excellent. Hello, and a very warm welcome to this IHES track on developing global citizens. My name is Janet Ilieva, and I'm director and founder of Education Insight, which is a consultancy specializing in transnational education and global engagement. I am truly honored to be with you here today and to chair this distinguished panel that will present to you 4 case studies that will give us examples from across the world, starting from North America through Europe and all the way to Kenya. And as such, without further ado, I shall very briefly introduce my fellow panelists. I shall start with Professor Markus Schwei. Markus has a master's degree in architecture from the Graz University of Technology in Austria and a PhD from the same institution. He is an architect by training and professor in urban design and planning at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, NTNU in Trondheim, Norway. He is responsible for the bachelor education in urban design and planning for students in architecture. He's experienced in local planning and urban design. And before joining the university, he's worked for several architecture offices and municipal planning offices across Europe, and also for UNESCO in Nepal. Lydia Gallego-Balser, hello Lydia, is a lecturer in sociolinguistics at the Department of English and German Studies at the Universitat Rovira in Vergili. Her research interests includes multilingual language policies in international universities, study abroad, linguistic ethnography, and discourse analysis. She is also the co-author of the Sociolinguistics of Higher Education, published by Palgrave 2 years ago. Alongside Lydia on the panel, we also have Susanna Delobe. She's a part of the administrative staff in International Center of the Universitat Rovira i Virgili. She's been part of the SMILE program since the inception of the program 15 years ago. And Andrei Muchka, hello Andrei. He finished his bachelor degrees in classical animation in Zlin 2009. And he followed up with his master's in Bratislava 2 years later. He then went on to do PhD at the Department of Art Education at the Palack University, and that was in 2015. He started volunteering for Ilieva NGO, and since 2017, he was voted as his president. As you can see, Andrei has many talents. He's activist and university employee, but equally to all that, he's also an artist. And not last, Nalini Andrade. She's an international development practitioner. She has a decade's worth of experience in education, youth, and women's empowerment and community development. She is the manager of the International Development Institute of Humber College in Canada. Nalini is responsible for developing international collaborations in higher education and Tibet. She draws upon her practical knowledge and experience to manage projects across East Africa and Southeast Asia. And just to confuse everybody, I should start with reverse order. So shall we start with a fascinating case study that Nalini will present about her work in Kenya. Nalini, over to you.
Thank you, Janet. Are you able to hear me clearly? I'll just share my screen. Can you see and hear me? Yes, okay. Well, good morning, everyone, from cold and snowy Toronto. So HEIs project is the Kenya Education for Employment Program. This project is funded by the Government of Canada through Global Affairs Canada and managed by the Colleges and Institutes Canada. So Humber College is leading a project called KEFEP O2, which is within this umbrella. This is a consortium of 3 Canadian colleges with 3 Kenyan national polytechnics. My 2-minute slide for project summary. So I thought it would be interesting for you to maybe divide the pieces between external and internal, because the project straddles international development or international assistance, as well as higher education. So the main motivation for this project was TVET reform. TVET is Technical Vocational Education and Training. And this supports the Government of Kenya's vision 2030 to become industrialized middle income country. And so therefore preparing the graduates to meet the needs of Industry 4.2 workforce, as well as the industry. Internally, Humber College engages in these projects because it's part of our strategic plans and mandates. Strategically, we look at developing global polytechnic leadership and global citizenship at the institution. Our academic plan, talks of teaching and learning opportunities for our campus community, and of course, our internationalization strategy to take Humber to the world and globalize our polytechnic identity. The biggest challenge that we faced in this project, well, this is a development project, so we have the project because there's a challenge to tackle. And the challenge is this complete paradigm shift in the way our Kenyan institutions are doing teaching and learning. So from a traditional teacher-centered approach to a competency-based, learner-centered approach, collaborating with industry, but also embedding key components of gender equity. So especially when it comes to women's access to STEM, as well as environmental sustainability. And so we've of course been successful, but this was the biggest challenge to tackle over the past 4 years. I forgot to mention the fact that the project started in May 2017, and it's over in March 2022. The biggest challenge for us internally was, of course, adapting to the pandemic. This is a very in-person relationship building sort of a project where there's a lot of mobility with Canadian partners traveling to Kenya and Kenyan partners coming here. And of course, over the last 2 years, we really had to adapt. I guess, we've been relatively successful in adapting to COVID and moving this project sort of online virtually. The key enablers here on both sides were really multi-stakeholder investment and interest. So when we talk about the sector, there's been, of course, the Government of Canada's interest in higher education reform and sub-Saharan Africa, the Government of Kenya's interest in the shift and change of the education system within the country, and then the Canadian colleges' interest to engage in work such as this. And of course, internally to Humber, it's deeply embedded within our institutional strategies, as well as the fact that we're the only college to have a center of excellence in international development, the International Development Institute. So recommendations, I thought about this, and I think a really key recommendations is in the approach. The approach to education. I mentioned when we looked at education reform, we focus not just on teaching and learning, curriculum and pedagogy, but also the other aspects of gender equity, of environmental sustainability, of working with industry, with the community. These are all interrelated and cannot be seen as silos in order to fulfill when we say holistic education reform. And the second piece is a participatory approach to international development. we've really made efforts to, to decolonize the way international development is done with the traditional way of being sort of a north to south knowledge transfer, but looking at authentic partnerships, how we can engage in knowledge sharing, how there's an investment of all partners, so that when it's easier to navigate when times like the pandemic happen, because all partners then have a vested interest and feel part of the project and invested in making it successful. So I'll stop there. Thank you, and hand it back to Janet.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nalini. And we shall now go to Professor Markus Schwei. I apologize, Markus. I should have introduced you as a full professor in urban design and architect by training. Markus, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. You should not, I think it's fine like it is, this is where the Norwegian society comes through. It doesn't matter so much, it's not the title which makes you a person. So don't worry, I'm Markus. And since I'm Markus, I will try to share this this short intro slide, and I hope you can see it. Could you please confirm that you see my screen?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. In contrary to what we heard right now from Nalini, we have a slightly different approach, or maybe you have the same approach, but a different appearance of the result. The main motivation of this project, which is called Banja Luka Pier, which is a small urban installation along the river in the city of Banja Luka in the north of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The main motivation was actually international student exchange cooperation. It was run under an energy development or energy saving motivation, but as most of these big international programs, we could find our way, and I could actually implement some small parts which I work with also in the rest of the time, namely the urban interventions which should change or would help change behavior of the citizens towards a more sustainable future. So coming back, the main motivator was actually this student exchange, and we had to identify. I start from the back, which were the key persons which could help us, or the key enablers. It were as this group here is called global citizens. It was a global citizen but living locally, so it was a local global citizen. So actually a researcher which was studying in other places, experiencing other societies, and there is also understanding which were the biggest challenges in implementing. So from an educational point of view, it was different curricula, different time frame, and all these things. But the main challenge was to overcome sociocultural differences. So how, for example, female students were seen, or how students were seen in general compared to the rest of the society, and was not. This was actually the first project students were planning and implementing in this place. The side challenge was that usually they would not have got permission to do it anyway. Let me try to switch to another page. So as I said, it was this cooperation, and as you see, this is a very small intervention, but the real outcome of this intervention was that it was a long-term project with several workshops, which along the way we could implement or invite the local citizens, and they could help us in finding out what actually the problem was, why this space is not used, and what could help them to use them. In the same time, us being aware of what are necessities, they also became we became aware of this place being theirs. So it was a kind of giving them back the ownership of the place just through this small installation. But what the real outcome was very nice visualized from Isaac in this picture. There was this in former Yugoslavia developed outdoor space along the river, which was not used and deteriorated over time, which was now not visible in this picture, but which was very evident through this basket, the basketball basket, which was not there anymore. And one night, a local citizen came and repaired it. So it took them some external input to regain ownership and regain proudness of their place. And so this guy repaired it, and no, this was not the typical situation the day after, because this was actually the opening. But the day after, it took only half an hour. After I arrived there were suddenly some youngsters playing in this field. And I think this is maybe the biggest outcome also in discussing educating global citizens. So it's maybe the global which only can inspire rather than giving them so much more. So this was, I think, is very short time to explain a quite complex project, but I hope we can later on find time to come back and discuss it more in depth.
That's fantastic, Markus. Thank you so much. I'm sure that we can find out more about your regeneration work in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Banja Luka in particular through the Q&A part of this session. And now we're gonna try to bring Andre in. I understand you've got a little bit of a conundrum, technical conundrum there, Andre. What I shall try to do on your behalf is share my screen and see if I've got the right presentation. So I'm gonna try to do that. Is this it, Andre? If you can unmute yourself and join us. Right, you're on mute, Andre. Can you hear us? Okay, over to you.
But you still need to unmute yourself.
Andre, we can't hear you. Right, I think we may be experiencing a slight technical issue, and well, just to allow Andre to fix the problem, perhaps we can go ahead with Lydia. Lydia, are you okay to step in, and then we can try Andre again?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me now?
Very well, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. It's one of my first times on Zoom because we use a different program. So I hope everything works. Can you see my full screen? Yeah? Okay. So, well, I'm Lydia. I'm going to be presenting together with Susanna, which is she's not as a presenter. She's had some technical problem as well, but she's here in the room, and she will be answering questions as well. And well, basically, we are going to present our SMILE program, and the meaning of the word SMILE stands for Student Mobility in Learning English, and it refers to a project that started 15 years ago. And the main motivation was to make local students that attend public schools in the region of Tarragona in Spain The aim was to make them interact in the foreign language that they were learning at school. The program has evolved over time, and now we also offer language assistance in also English, but also French and German, which are the most common foreign languages that students learn in primary and secondary schools in Spain. So basically, the SMILE program consists of bringing international students from the university into the local schools. And this means that it's an activity for internationalization of the territory. So we try to offer the surrounding areas of the university the benefits of the institution's internationalization. And basically, we want to promote interculturality in the schools and also the learning of foreign languages. We also believe that this is an activity that works in favor of social justice and contributes to erasing inequalities, because students who attend local public schools might not have the opportunity to study abroad in summertime or have native language teachers. And this is a way in which we can offer them also opportunities to become more intercultural and globally competent. So it's a strategy for us to open the students' minds at a very young age, starting from primary school, and to keep working on that until they arrive at university, so they are already prepared. Our biggest challenge has been and still is probably the pandemic, because it has affected mobility at a global scale, which means that in the past, in 2019, I think we received something like we had 11 international students every term who wanted to enroll our program. And this first term of the year 2021, we only had 4 students. So having 4 students means that we can only reach 4 local schools. And in the whole region of Tarragona, that's not much. So basically, our challenge is to try to attract more international students to enroll the program. And we do that also with very scarce financial resources. We cannot pay the students for their internships in the schools, but we do offer them academic credits. We offer them the internship. The internship is recognized by the university, and they obtain credits for the work that they do in the schools. Our key enabler is basically to support, to receive support from all governing bodies. This is a joint coordination program between the university and the Department of Education. So it's key for us to have the support of the Department of Education, who actually opens us the entrance to the schools. Without them, we couldn't access the school. So they are probably our key enabler. As recommendations for anyone who would like to implement such a program, we think that the most important thing that makes a program like this possible, when there are so many agents and different stakeholders involved, it's basically to have fluid communication, to communicate with each other, is our probably strongest point. When we talk to the different people working for the Department of Education, we try to discuss everything, to be very transparent, to talk about also like strong points, but also weaknesses. And we try to reach a consensus and a solution all together. And also we think that it's good not to give up in front of the difficulties that you might encounter. Like for instance, the low number of international students that we are having this year at the moment. And it requires a lot of effort in terms of bureaucracy and coordination work, but we do believe it's really important to promote intercultural skills from a really young age, and this is the way in which we are trying to achieve it.
That's fantastic, Lydia. Thank you. It's not just any study abroad program, is it? It's work, study, and smile.
Yeah, everything together.
This is a great example of how to embed working practices as part of a study abroad program, but we will hear more about it in a moment through the Q&A session. I can see Andre is back, and Andre, can I check, are you able to share your screen?
I'm sorry, but because I had to join from my phone, and I'm not sure if I can't see all those like settings and here. So if you can, yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. I'm very sorry. I just don't understand what's wrong, because they are both exactly the same devices, both Samsung, and I don't know how it's possible that it wasn't working on my tablet. So now I'm on my phone, which is under the table in charger. So I hope you can see me from a good angle.
No worries. We always have plan B.
Yeah. So
yes,
thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience. Now this is my time to present you the queer visibility project called OLAF in University City of Olomouc of Czechia, Palacký University in Olomouc. Our main goal is to spread awareness and edification about queer topics and gender-related topics. And the main idea of the project is that people are often fear of what is unknown for them, because you maybe have some from media, some prejudice and stereotypes about some group of citizens of people, and when you don't know them, you apply those stereotypes and prejudice. So the most idea is to focus, like let us introduce to them, so they can see us, they can know us, and they know that we are just same as them as the majority. But the biggest challenge is that the majority is sometimes don't want to see, because they have their specific problems and activities. So they don't often aren't interesting in our topics. So mostly the events we do, I have sometimes the feeling that we are doing them for ourselves, for our community, which is great, and for maybe some people who are interested, but there are very only few of them. So the main challenge is to came across these borders and try to spread it even more with the people who like the interest in these topics. So that's probably the biggest challenge, and I should maybe skip to the slide 2, if you can just let it go. Yeah, thank you very much. And the most key enablers are that even in 21st century here in Czech Republic, we are still not equal. The LGBTQ+ people don't have the same right here, don't have the equal rights, and we still face some discrimination and phobia. So this is that is what put fire in our activities, because we, for example, for somebody who is not very interested, they can have that feeling that everything's okay. But if someone is just a bit more involved in those topics, we can see what's happening in Hungary, in Slovakia, in Poland, not only with the LGBTQ rights, but also with the women reproductive rights. So we can see that there are still some issues and some things that we have to fight for ourselves, and that's why the advice is for us to stay focused and engaged. It is sometimes very difficult because you can have the feelings that you can't do the change. But for me, even if I can just one person with my activities, just one life, or not even life, but someone's opinion, it is still the thing to do. It is still worth it, because it may be only be one life, but then they can change another life, another opinion, and so on. So that would be maybe for the presentation from me.
That's great, thank you. I shall stop sharing your screen, which takes us nicely into the Q&A. I want, while we give a chance to our audience to come up with a few questions, if I can just quickly ask you, what in your opinion, if you're to sum up, which do you think is the top long-term impact of your work? And I'm very mindful how difficult this might be in terms of when we measure or we evaluate projects. Usually the short-term work is the one that comes on the top of our evaluations because the impact is immediate. But given the time, if we have the luxury of time, what in your opinion you think would be the top impact of your work? Who would like to go first? Professor Schwei?
Yes, I can do. Maybe is partially can help in explaining the project a little bit more. Talking about impact brings me directly to two things. One would be output and outcome, where the output, which architecture or urban interventions often are measured upon, is what people see or what they use. In that respect, in our case, this wooden platform, which has also some historical bonding, because there is the river boats, which are very traditional and they need a landing pier. But what I would say is this could be a long-term impact, this output, but is depending on maintenance and so on. But what I think is more important long-term impact is the outcome, and I would say internally in the student educative part. It, as I said before, it was the first time then that the students could or under the cover of our projects could do something which is now evident in public space and which is in regular use still. So this is built in 2017, and I have very good friends there, and it's in regular use. But also society-wise, there is the structures which are running in the municipality. They also, everything is a little bit run by trust. So maybe this would be the Norwegian spice to this project. So the Norwegian country is run by trust. But also, as I said before, that this place was used by drug addicts and alcoholics before, and the local citizens did not want to use the area, so they regained proudness. So I think also because them being involved in the project, it was not our project or the students' project implemented upon them, but it was them with us implementing a project. So it will always coming back to what I said before. So maybe even the maintenance will not be a problem. So I think in this balance between output and outcome, this maybe is the main impact of this small project.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks very much. And Lydia, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think our impact long term could be measured in terms of the students' capacity to communicate in the foreign language. And one of the main weaknesses of students today is that by the time they reach university, they should have a B1 level of English, which is according to the Common European Framework of Reference. But at least in terms of oral skills, they are not that competent. So we expect our own students, our own university students, to have a better level of English and the foreign language by the time they reach university. So this would be one of the main impacts. And of course, as they have models of international students who are working in an internship in their local school, also by the time they reach university, they already know someone who has participated in an international mobility program, and they could potentially enroll a program themselves when they become university students. So it's a little bit about preparing them to be more open towards internationalization, and by the time they arrive at university. And also another very important outcome of our program is the fact that the local teachers, they keep in touch with international people. Yeah, our international students, they also help the local teachers to remain updated in terms of speaking the foreign language. Because I mean, when you cannot travel because you have a permanent job, it becomes more difficult to maintain the foreign language. So it's also a way in which we can keep the local teachers updated in those terms.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thanks very much. And Andre, what about your area of work? What do you see as your kind of long-term influence?
Well, it is really hard for me to measure the impact, because it should require some sociology research or something like that. But I can see some feedback from our participants, from our action, and the most impact I can see is that we are seen as an organization, and other organizations ask us to join their events. For example, there was the theater festival, and there was this theater play about LGBTQ topics, and they asked us to become part of the discussion afterwards. So we are given space to spread our awareness and to spread the discussion. And for example, very last week, I was asked to become a member of some governmental working advice group. So that is the impact I can see, that maybe I am, with my small town activities here, I can be visible, and then I can go for another level and get the opportunities to actually change something or create an impact in the future. So that will be my answer.
Yes, thank you. It all starts from small steps until we are ready to make a giant leap. Thanks a lot, Andre. And if I can go to Nalini, but we've got a question from the audience, which is directed at you, Nalini. So if in addition to the long-term impact of your fascinating work in Kenya, what Ana Garcia is asking is, you mentioned participatory development approach, and she's after how was that approach implemented in the project? So would you be able to kind of answer two questions in one go? I'll be very grateful. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Janet, and thank you, Anna, for the question. So let me just explain. When we say participatory, it's a partnership-based approach. So through this project, Humber's faculty, staff are then linked to counterparts within Kenya. So our faculty and staff would work with the faculty members within the Kenyan institution and co-develop the curriculum, do training and teaching together. And we also let our Kenyan partners drive the way in which they would like to engage within their institutions. So yes, we call our our representative subject matter experts, but it's really working with our Kenyan partners and trying to understand how the knowledge is applicable in the local context. So on that note, I think talking about long-term impact, of course, our project has a project monitoring framework, so we have to submit quarterly reports. We might get audited. So we're obsessed with reporting, but we always like to look beyond the numbers and beyond this data. What does impact really mean? And what we see is, on Humber side, the faculty, staff, and even students who participated, we've seen the return back in the classrooms. In the way in which case studies are being shared, in the way, the interest in the way in which the institution wants to engage in more work like this, and especially embedding international development, international cooperation within our strategic plans, because now a lot of our strategies are getting renewed. And you always know when something is of interest to an institution when it starts being featured in the strategic plan, the academic plan, the internationalization strategy. So for that, that's definitely a long-term impact and achievement. But for our Kenyan partners, we've really seen ownership, which is really something to be proud of. And I'd like to just take two quick examples. The first is when we came back, when the institutions returned to in-person after the pandemic, they noticed that a lot of young girls were coming back either pregnant or with young children, and therefore dropping out, and there was absenteeism. And so they put a petition to us to say, can you request a funder? We would like to start a breastfeeding and childcare facility, because they've seen it in Canada and nothing exists there. And normally the funder does not approve construction, but they approved it in this case. And we're now co-developing a breastfeeding facility, which we know will be the first of its kind at a TVET institution in Kenya. And so it's led by the partners. It's a project that they're, with input from us, but they're leading. But then once it's done, it'll become a model for other institutions within the country and in the region. And then the second thing is that we co-submitted the project to UNESCO UNIVOC, and it was accepted. So now that institution and the work that's being done at Segala National Polytechnic is considered an innovative practice in Africa. So it's an example within the country, but also within the region. So even, we might say, oh, led by Humber College, but that narration is led by our partner. And I think that's when we talk of long-term impact, it's about how can you encourage South-South cooperation and knowledge transfer within the region. And for us, that's success. So thank you.
Oh, that's a fantastic recognition of your work there. Well done. It seems that we are about to run out of time, but I think it's also an opportunity to give it a chance. If you want our audience to walk away with one lesson that you have learned over the past few years, what kind of advice, what's a lesson do you think you've learned in terms of any setbacks that you might have experienced during your work, any challenges that you might have encountered? I mean, we've all went through pandemic, and all your projects are international projects. In Andre's case, it's an example of artwork, but your area was probably one of the most impacted area as well. So any lessons learned or any piece of advice in how to tackle challenges on the way? And I quite liked Lydia's advice. It's the key here is never give up. Just don't give up and persevere. So shall we start with Lydia? You have roughly 1 minute each.
I think probably the key factor is to trust each other, because we work with a different department. So we are the university working with the Department of Education, and we need to trust each other. So it's from my own advice would be to always be transparent and try to sort out any difficulties that might come up together, and to trust each other, not to break that trust.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And Andre, any lessons that you would want to share with us?
Well, my lesson that I would like to share is that stepping out of your comfort zones is good for your development, because I was afraid to speak to audience like few years back, and I have to learn it, because when I became the president of this, the head of this our organization, I had to speak to audience, and I just learned it. And even though I'm still nervous, it I just get over it, and it's now I can speak quite consciously, or quite so. Stepping out from your comfort zones is good for you.
Excellent. Oh, excellent. It's quite a cathartic experience, but yet there is a huge learning attached to it. Thank you for sharing this with us. And Markus, what would be your words of wisdom?
I think I don't have words of wisdom. I think it's very difficult to. It's not about suggesting. Most of all these activities, which I think also this for here, they are fabulous. Each one for or I should not say it about myself. It's not very polite, but in their own way and in their own context. So I think I would rather say not. as you discussed also, you asked for challenges. Now, I'm not going to discuss political or leadership or challenges of societies, but I would say a big challenge also in education and indirectly also in developing global citizen is something which I maybe would shortly call risk. So our society is not willing anymore to take any risk for anything. So the results have to be more or less clear before we start. Even if you see, even the education system from primary school until university, so everything is a little bit planned, not only a little bit, everything is planned through. So I would maybe hang on what Lydia said. I think based on one trust on one himself or herself, but also on the partners to have that together one has to allow things. I think it's very difficult to plan risk, but it's mainly about allow things happening along the way. And often, I don't say always, but often the results are very rewarding.
Excellent. That's very positive to hear. And if we can go to Nalini next, I mean, COVID has presented a huge disruption to the way of life, but also to international travel. And yet you persevered and you continued your work with your partners in Kenya. How did you do it?
I think I just communicate. Find whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Zoom or Teams or email, and time zones. I mean, my day starts at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. But we work with that and communication and working in partnership. So that's my 2 key points: communication and partnership. Thank you.
That's fantastic, and we're ending this session on a very positive note. It's trust, communication, and working in partnership as key takeaways from this session. And I thank you very much wholeheartedly for your contribution. And I shall hand over to Uwe. Uwe, over to you.
Thanks so much. I also take one additional thing with me, which I also particularly liked, and that is Andre's approach towards how to deal with this trouble of having big expectations and then maybe not seeing the huge results. So to be content with the small wins, because and with a slow pace. I think that is one of the tricky things, particularly for me. I personally am always somebody, do something. I need a result now, tack, 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 and a lot of it, But of course, that is not how these things work. And I think that was also for me very, very useful. And I think something that went through all these projects that you presented, that you need time, patience, and also humbleness and humility in a certain way, that we just see we can only do a little bit, but that little matters. I love that, Andre, what you said, that if you change one person, you change the world and you achieved something. Make one person less narrow-minded, xenophobic, homophobic, whatever phobic, is an achievement. And I think all your projects do that in a very different way. I totally love this session. I'm very grateful for you having been here. Thanks so much.